Whiskers was no ordinary cat. Oh no, he was a tiny furry tornado of mischief. Big green eyes sparkled with mischief, his fluffy tail, always twitching, plotting the next prank. Whiskers lived in a quaint little town. Everyone knew his name, mostly because of his antics. He belonged to Mrs. Periwinkle, a sweet old lady. She loved him dearly, despite his naughty habits. "Oh, Whiskers," she'd sigh, shaking her head. But a smile always betrayed her amusement. He was a rascal, yes, but he kept life interesting. A typical day for Whiskers began with breakfast, but not before he untangled Mrs. Periwinkle's yarn balls. It looked like a rainbow exploded in her living room. Then, he might chase the postman. He swore that bag held nothing but catnip. Afternoons were reserved for napping on freshly ironed laundry, or maybe he'd help the baker by batting a dough. The baker, Mr. Crumbly, would just grumble and hand him a cat treat. Evenings were for grand adventures. He'd sneak into the general store, hiding amongst the bags of flour, or he'd climb the tallest tree, pretending to be the king of the world. The townsfolk found Whiskers both annoying and endearing. He was a master of chaos, no doubt, but his antics were always good for a laugh. Old Mrs. Higgins swore he stole her dentures once. They were found in the dog park, much to everyone's amusement. Speaking of dogs, Bruno the bulldog was his sworn enemy, or was he his best friend? It was hard to tell. They'd chase each other around town barking and hissing, but at the end of the day they'd share a bowl of milk, albeit cautiously. Then there was Lucy, the little girl next door. She adored Whiskers. He'd let her dress him up in doll clothes. He pretended to hate it, but the twinkle in his eye said otherwise. One day Whiskers' curiosity got the better of him. He snuck into the annual pie contest. He just wanted a taste, but he tripped, sending blueberry filling flying everywhere. The townsfolk were furious. This time he'd gone too far. Mrs. Periwinkle gave him a stern talking to. He felt a pang of guilt. He hadn't meant to ruin the fun. He just loved a good pie. He spent the rest of the day curled up, feeling remorseful. The next day, though, he was back to his old tricks. He chased a butterfly, tangled himself in a ball of yarn, and even stole a kiss from a surprised-looking goldfish in a bowl. Some things never change, but maybe, just maybe, he'd try to be a little less mischievous. Okay, who are we kidding? He was Whiskers after all.